Thank you.
Now on to another prediction I'm going to make. This one I don't think is a leap. Finding this video of the Obamacare architect's remarks saying all of these things, I think it's going to be very difficult, shall we say more difficult than the media pouncing on a certain Mitt Romney video when he said that 47% pay no taxes. Now, they couldn't play that particular video enough. In fact, they did so in loops, even though no one really dismissed the accuracy of Romney's remarks, that they were inelegant, as he told me himself, that nearly half the people in this country really are not paying federal income taxes. No matter. With Mitt, they had a fit. On Obamacare, hardly a care. Does that sound fair and balanced to you? Well, it doesn't to Judge Andrew Napolitano either. I think it's going to be tough to get this video, Judge.
Well, I think the video has been suppressed in large measure because most of our colleagues in the media, many of whom work within a couple blocks of where you and I are now, favor this legislation and favor the authors of it and like the concept of healthy people paying for sick people and probably agree with what Professor Gruber said.
But this is far more damning than actually the factual stuff, inelegant as it was, that Romney was saying.
Absolutely.
You know?
If this is true, and we have no reason to dispute it, Professor Gruber doesn't deny what he says and he doesn't deny the accuracy of what he says, then we know that the administration and its drafters of this legislation knowingly and intentionally duped the CBO, that's the Congressional Budget Office, whose job it is to calculate for Congress and the public what legislation costs, duped members of the Congress, and duped the average American voter, whom this professor said is stupid.
Well, they say, that's very well put. They say that no one was duped. They deliberately kept it vague. But then I'm hearkening back to Nancy Pelosi, saying we have to vote on to see what's in it. I think she knew exactly what was in it.
You know, there's a principle of law that the Supreme Court is certainly familiar with, and that is when a statute is vague, it is drafted with presumptions against, it is interpreted with presumptions against the drafter. Guess what? This statute is back before the Supreme Court in the spring, and the issue has to do with vagueness in drafting. Whether or not states that don't have exchanges, the IRS can grant tax credits to the people living in those states. Because the statute says the state has to set up the exchange for the IRS to grant the tax credit. And the administration says, well, that language was intentionally vague. If this phrase, this admission by this professor gets before the Supreme Court, Obamacare loses. Because
and the Supreme Court several is taking up the tax credit issue now in light of this.
Well, if the tax credit issue is taken out of Obamacare, mathematically it collapses. It can't be supported. Now we know, if this professor is telling the truth, that it was intentionally written with vagueness on this issue of taxes.
But you remember, Judge, when you and I were talking about this, and you're a lot sharper than I am, but I kept saying, well, wait a minute. How can you cover everyone with pre-existing conditions, which anyone would be morally and ethically for, having been there myself, cover pre-existing conditions, cover the young, keep your kids on your policy longer, and not end up seeing premiums go higher? How could you look at that math and say that that was unsustainable? Furthermore, how could anyone look at this and assume that the government would build such a scale of savings just by sheer size that it would somehow pay for all of this? The math didn't add up, the documentation didn't add up, and now we know the architect's words didn't add up.
And now we know this was all done intentionally. And guess what? The Supreme Court now knows this as well.
What does that mean legally for those who did that?
It means nothing legally for those who did it. It means politically they should be they are disreputable and they should not be reelected.
But if you lie or present deliberately false data to support a deliberately false conclusion,
well,
isn't that a crime?
If a lawyer presents deliberately false information to a court knowing it's false, the lawyer is subject to discipline by the ethics people that manage the state in which he's admitted to practice. But if a politician deliberately drafts legislation with ambiguity to dupe the people, the remedy is political to that politician. It's not
What if that
legal.
politician is a lawyer?
What if that politician is the President of the United States and doesn't have to run for re-election again? No wonder he's so unhappy.
Judge Andrew Napolitano, thank you very much, my friend.